For weeks, Nora would come home utterly exhausted, preoccupied with strategies to outdo her colleague at work. Initially, her drive and determination seemed unstoppable, but over time, that fierce energy started to fade. Then, one evening, she casually let slip that they'd begun collaborating on projects. As their deadline to secure a major client loomed, I couldn't shake a gnawing unease, wondering if their relationship might extend beyond business. Nora tried to soothe my concerns, but my mind kept wandering to unsettling possibilities. As I grabbed my bag from the overhead compartment while leaving the plane, I was already brainstorming a way to surprise Nora with dinner. I wanted something special but not over the top. After a quick ride to my hotel, I struck up a conversation with the taxi driver, who mentioned a cozy, dimly lit restaurant perfectly situated between my hotel and hers. It sounded like exactly the atmosphere I had in mind. Once I checked in, I took a quick shower, threw on some fresh clothes, and headed out to find Nora before she could make other plans. The clock in the hotel lobby read 5:30, and the streets outside buzzed with life. A walk to the restaurant felt like the perfect way to unwind. Following the receptionist's directions, I easily located the place, and it was just as charming as the driver had described: cozy, intimate, and tucked away. After tipping the driver generously, I made my way toward Nora's hotel with a sense of anticipation. By 5:50, I was standing at her hotel's reception desk, greeted by a cheerful woman behind the counter. "Hi, I'm David Green," I said with a smile. "Could you see if my wife, Nora Green, is in her room? I'd like to surprise her." She confirmed the name, glanced at her records, and then dialed Nora's room. After a brief pause, she looked up apologetically. "I'm sorry, but there's no answer." "Would you like to leave a message?" she asked. Masking my disappointment, I replied, "Not right now." I was hoping to catch her off guard. "Tomorrow's our anniversary, and I'd appreciate it if you could keep this quiet." Her face lit up with understanding. "Of course, sir. I hope you both enjoy your special day." "Thanks," I said. "I'll head to a restaurant now and see if luck's on my side." As I turned to leave, I noticed a lively area at the far end of the lobby, bustling with people chatting, eating, and working. The crowd made finding her seem unlikely, but I decided to check. I spotted a restroom near the back and took a moment to freshen up. Then, with renewed determination, I scanned the room from the entrance. Still, there was no sign of her. Not ready to give up, I wandered past the booths, trying not to disturb anyone. When I reached the third one, my stomach dropped. There she was, seated with a man I didn't recognize. She looked stunning in a dark, elegant dress, and the warmth in her expression was unmistakable. Their interaction seemed far more intimate than anything professional. My pulse quickened as I saw him lean closer, and I instinctively steadied myself on a nearby frame. Then, she leaned in, and they shared a soft, tender kiss. The sight hit me like a punch to the gut. I stepped back, overwhelmed, and retreated to a nearby chair in the center of the hall, trying to process what I just witnessed. Her familiar laugh rang out again, and I looked up to see her walking hand in hand with him, their bodies close, their smiles playful. It was a sight that twisted something deep inside me. They passed by just a few feet away, completely engrossed in each other, and I couldn't help but notice the way she looked at him, like I hadn't seen her look at me in years. A lump formed in my throat, and I sat there, frozen. Determined to face the truth, I followed them outside. My jaw tightened as I watched her cling to his arm as they strolled down the street. They disappeared around the corner, heading toward the very restaurant the taxi driver had recommended. I trailed behind at a slower pace, trying to pull myself together. As I approached the restaurant, I stopped a few steps from the entrance and took a deep breath. Gathering my composure, I decided I needed answers, no matter how painful they might be. Slipping quietly inside, I stuck to the shadows near the wall, unnoticed in the softly lit space. My eyes adjusted slowly, and then I spotted them at a small, intimate table in the far corner. Their laughter and the way they leaned into each other said more than words ever could. With my heart pounding, I moved carefully along the walls, using them for support as if they could ground me in the moment. Eventually, I settled at a small table within earshot of Nora and her companion, making sure I wasn't drawing any attention to myself. Before I could fully process what I was doing, a waitress approached with a cheerful smile. "What can I get for you, dear?" she asked warmly. "Double scotch on the rocks," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. As I waited for my drink, fragments of their conversation floated my way. His voice, calm and low, carried a tone of intimacy. "The meeting tomorrow doesn't start until 10, so we've got plenty of time to celebrate tonight." Nora's response came with a light, playful laugh. "I'm glad you didn't let him pressure you into leaving early. Missing our 2-month anniversary? Not a chance." Her words hit me like a freight train. 2 months. The realization sank in hard, twisting my gut. "It could have started sooner," he said with a chuckle. "If only you'd taken me up on my offer during my first week." She laughed again, brushing off his comment. "Oh, please. I had to keep up appearances," she teased. "Don't forget, I'm still technically married." She shook her head, reminiscing with a smile. "And to think you approached me right in front of Susan. Bold move, knowing I was married." "She hinted you might be interested," he said with a smirk. "I guess we owe her for playing matchmaker." The waitress reappeared then, placing their drinks on the table. They raised their glasses, toasting with smiles that felt like daggers in my chest. "To an incredible 2 months, and to many more," he said with a confident grin. "I'll drink to that," Nora replied brightly, her smile beaming. Just then, the waitress returned with my scotch, pulling me out of my daze. "Here you go, dear. Anything else?" I handed her a $10 bill and shook my head. "Thanks, ma'am," I said quietly before turning back toward Nora's table. As I did, I noticed her companion's gaze briefly shift toward me. Nora caught the change in his focus and followed his line of sight, her cheerful expression fading into shock as she recognized me. I leaned back slightly in my chair and muttered just loud enough for her to hear. "A guy should carry a camera for moments like these." Her confusion and surprise only deepened as I continued, my voice edged with sarcasm. "You're a picture-perfect couple. This could make one hell of a postcard." Nora's lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came out. The weight of their anniversary and her betrayal bore down on me. I couldn't stop myself. 2 months, huh? I still remember our anniversaries, 11 years of them, but I guess they lose their shine after a while. I raised my glass and forced a toast. Here's to 2 months. A real testament to love and commitment. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled off my wedding ring and tossed it onto their table. The small piece of metal clinked sharply against the glass. "Consider that my gift to you." The man, who I now assumed was named Kevin, started to protest, but I cut him off, focusing squarely on Nora. "Make sure he understands just how lucky he is that he's not standing in my home right now." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. "Let me know where I should send your things. It's best you don't come back. And maybe," I added bitterly, "an ice pack will help with the sting of this." Without waiting for a response, I turned on my heel and strode out of the restaurant, my footsteps echoing loudly in the silence I left behind. Once outside, I walked briskly back to the hotel, my emotions a chaotic mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. It occurred to me that Nora likely didn't know my current address, especially not after tonight, and I doubted she'd make any effort to reach out. When I reached the front desk, I approached the receptionist. "Excuse me," I said, my voice firm but weary. "Can you help me with contact numbers for airlines? I need to book a flight as soon as possible." "Of course, sir," she replied promptly. "Do you have a specific airline or destination in mind?" I quickly rattled off the details, and she assured me the information would be sent up to my room. Taking the elevator back, I paced restlessly once inside, my thoughts racing. How had it come to this? Was this betrayal always a part of who Nora was, or had I missed the signs? The way she acted tonight, it felt rehearsed, almost as though she'd perfected the performance. Unable to stay idle, I grabbed my bag and headed back down to the lobby. The receptionist, just finishing a call, waved me over as I arrived. "Sir, if you leave now, you'll make the last flight of the day. Registration closes in 30 minutes. Otherwise, the next one departs in 3 hours." "Thank you," I said with a faint nod, clinging to the sliver of hope her words offered. Signing the cash receipt she handed me, I noted the sympathetic smile on her face. "I'm sorry you have to leave so soon," she said softly. "We hope you'll stay with us again." I gave her a polite nod and made my way out, ready to leave everything behind and start over. I nodded politely, appreciating her genuine concern, and stepped toward the exit. Memories tried to creep in as I crossed the lobby, but I pushed them aside. Now wasn't the time to dwell. I needed to act. Outside, I hurried to the taxi stand, flagging down a cab with a wave. As I slid into the back seat, I leaned forward, my voice calm but firm. "I'll give you $50 if you can get me to the airport in less than 30 minutes. The driver glanced back, a sly grin spreading across his face. "You're on, boss." He handled the city streets like a seasoned pro, weaving through traffic with precision and confidence. True to his word, we pulled up at the airport in just 20 minutes. I handed him the fare along with a generous $150 tip, muttering a quick, "Thanks for the speed." Without waiting for a reply, I rushed into the terminal, my thoughts racing as I replayed the night's events. The adrenaline pumping through me made it hard to focus, but I knew one thing for certain. I had to get away. After clearing security, I found I still had a few minutes before boarding. The noise and bustle of the airport provided a strange sense of comfort, keeping my mind occupied without the need for music or distraction. A fleeting thought brought an unexpected chuckle to my lips. Nora's mother, Diana, with her sharp tongue and relentless judgments, popped into my head. She'd always looked down on me, but the feeling was mutual. Her household, run with an iron fist, left Brian, her husband, more like a prop than a partner. Diana's bold accusations still stung, especially the time she accused me of cheating simply because I looked at other women. I couldn't stand her meddling, but now I wondered if she'd seen something I hadn't. As the plane took off, my thoughts circled back to the night I'd just endured. Doubts gnawed at me like an itch I couldn't scratch. Reaching into my wallet, I pulled out an old photo of Nora and me. I stared at it for what felt like ages. The man in the picture looked like me, but not quite. It was unsettling, the way her gaze lingered on him in my imagination. A man who wasn't me but felt like a shadow of who I once was. How long had this been brewing under the surface? Nora had a habit of testing my memory, throwing out little challenges like, "Do you remember when we?" Or "Don't you recall that time?" I always prided myself on remembering every detail, every plan, every whispered word. But now, sitting on this plane, I questioned how much I'd truly seen. Had I missed the signs for 2 whole months? Had I been blind to something so obvious? Her words from earlier played over in my head. That man had shown interest in her right from the start, and she claimed she kept her distance out of respect for our marriage. But that claim now felt hollow. Their connection was undeniable, and I needed to act. A plan began to form. Pack her things, leave them at Diana's house, and start fresh. I braced myself for Diana's inevitable blame game, but I was ready for her venom. Clarity, no matter how painful, was my only goal. When the plane landed, I headed straight to my car, blending into the stream of tired travelers. The drive home was a haze of headlights and muffled thoughts. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house felt unfamiliar, as though it belonged to someone else. Dropping my bag in the hall, I made my way to the kitchen and hit play on the answering machine. Nora's voice filled the room, trembling with emotion. "David, please, don't do anything rash. I'm coming home to talk. Just wait for me, please." Her words lingered in the air, raw and desperate. Part of me wanted her to face what she'd done, to confront her betrayal head-on. But I wasn't ready to hear apologies, not when they came with that pleading tone. Frustration bubbled up, and before I could stop myself, my fist connected with the wall. The sharp pain grounded me, a bitter reminder to keep control. Restless, I headed to the garage and grabbed her suitcases, luggage she collected over years of vacations and trips. I chose a large black one and a smaller bag for the essentials, setting them aside while I went upstairs to tackle her closet. Methodically, I packed her belongings, my movements mechanical and deliberate. Each item felt like a piece of the life we'd built, now being dismantled. The thought of stopping for a late-night snack crossed my mind, but I shoved it away. This needed to be done. With her things packed, I loaded the bags into my car and drove to Diana's house. The streets were quiet, my drive slow and measured. When I arrived, I unloaded the bags quietly, stacking them near the garage. I didn't want to disturb Brian. He already endured enough with Diana. Just as I placed the final box, the front door opened. Diana stepped out, her face etched with confusion. "David, what's all this? What's going on?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. Maintaining a composure I didn't entirely feel, I said, "Well, I figured Nora might need her things when she gets here. I couldn't keep them cluttering the house any longer. They were just taking up too much space." Her face went pale as the weight of my words sank in. "What do you mean when Nora gets here? I thought she was out of town. Why would her belongings be here?" "Diana," I replied evenly, "I don't know exactly how she plans to handle things. She might end up staying with you for a while. There's also a chance she's thinking about moving in with the guy she's been spending time with, but nothing's set in stone. That's why I brought her stuff here." I watched her expression turn from confusion to outright disbelief as she stared at me, speechless. "What are you saying?" she demanded, her voice quivering. "How could you even think such a thing? Nora had to be out of town for work. She would never betray you like that." I let out a long breath, choosing my words carefully. "Diana, I saw them together last week. They were at a nightclub near her hotel, celebrating their 2-month anniversary like nothing else mattered. I had asked her to come home for our anniversary, but she kept saying she couldn't make it. So, I decided to surprise her. I flew out to be with her, and what did I find? A romantic, candlelit dinner with him." Her disbelief deepened as I continued, recounting the painful details. I felt like I'd walked into someone else's life. They were holding hands, sharing kisses across the table like they didn't have a care in the world. Later, I passed them in the hotel lobby. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I held back. She leaned in close to whisper something to him, and I decided to step outside instead. I needed air, to think straight. I paused, the memories still cutting deep. They didn't stop there. After dinner, they went to a nightclub. I found a spot close enough to overhear their conversation. She told him she didn't want to leave on their anniversary. He corrected her, saying it was their 3rd month together. That's when it hit me like a freight train. I needed proof of what I was seeing. After 10 years of sobriety, I ordered my first drink that night. Nora always worried my drinking might destroy our marriage. I gave up alcohol for her, even gave her my wedding ring as a sign of my commitment. And now, it's clear he means more to her than I ever did. Diana's face crumpled, and her voice grew desperate. "You're lying," she whispered. "How could you accuse her of something like this after 11 years? You've been through so much together." I locked eyes with her, my tone steady. "Diana, I'm not calling her my wife anymore. I get that she's your daughter, and you want to believe in her, but I don't owe her my loyalty anymore." For 3 months, she's looked me in the eye and lied without a shred of guilt. "If you think I'll welcome her back after that, then you're just as naive as she is." Her voice trembled. "What do you expect me to believe?" "I don't care what you believe," I said firmly. "I've made my decision. She has real feelings for this man, and if he wants her, he can have her. Once she's finished with this charade, I'll send her your way. Then you'll see for yourself who's really been dishonest." Without waiting for her response, I turned and walked away, feeling a restless energy I couldn't shake. I spent the next few hours wandering aimlessly around the house before retreating to the garage. I set up a makeshift workspace in a small corner, hoping to distract myself. But my thoughts were too loud, filling the silence with questions and anger. Then the doorbell rang, snapping me out of my haze. I moved cautiously to the door and opened it to find Nora standing there. She looked exhausted, her face etched with worry. "You must have been in the garage," she said softly. "I knocked, but you didn't hear me." "Just trying to straighten some things out," I replied, my voice as neutral as I could manage. The disarray in the garage seemed to mirror my state of mind. She let out a heavy sigh, her shoulders slumping. "Well, Mom called me. Sounds like you've already made up your mind about us." I looked at her, feeling a mix of sadness and frustration. "What did you expect, Nora? That I'd just shrug off your affair like it didn't matter?" She hesitated, caught off guard. "I wasn't thinking clearly," she admitted. "Everything just got so overwhelming." I shook my head. a strange calm settling over me. That's the tragedy, isn't it? While you were out sharing candlelit dinners, nights on the town, and whispered moments with him, I was here, alone, trusting you. You lied to me every single day, as if it meant nothing. Is this really how you want to end 11 years of marriage? Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Is this really how you want it to end? Yes, Nora, I said, surprised at the strength in my own voice. Did you ever stop to think about how I might feel? Did it even cross your mind? And now it's clear. There's no more choosing between us. You've already made your choice. I sank into a chair, letting out a weary sigh as the weight of it all settled in. Honestly, I couldn't care less about his name, I said, my voice edged with frustration. Doesn't he have a place for you to stay? Of course he does, she replied, her tone turning defensive. Well, there you go, I shot back sarcastically, watching her reaction as her face tightened. But tell me, are you sure his wife's fine with this setup? I asked, keeping my eyes on her. She froze for a moment, looking caught off guard. How do you know about his wife? Come on, Nora, I said, shaking my head. I'm not oblivious. Why else would you be here if not to hash out this tangled situation? So, what's the story? He's not planning to leave her for you, is he? Her expression shifted, softening as a hint of reflection crept in. I've thought about this a lot. 11 years together was a long time, but that chapter ended the moment I took off my ring. Don't think you can use our history against me. It's over. She glanced at the stack of papers between us. I'll sign them, she said, motioning toward the divorce documents. Take the house if that's what you want. I've come to terms with it all. Don't expect me to second-guess this decision or come crawling back. I'm moving forward, just like you. With a detached calm, she pulled her wedding ring from her pocket and handed it to me, her resolve steady yet distant. What am I supposed to do with this? She asked, her voice almost casual. Up to you, I replied. Pawn it if you want, though it probably won't fetch much. She shrugged, unconcerned. I might. Could use the cash. Don't get your hopes up, I said dryly. They usually pay by weight. It won't be more than pocket change. I turned toward the door, making it clear our conversation was wrapping up. Did you grab everything from the closet? She asked. I got what I needed, I said, not bothering to hide my indifference. Didn't exactly take my time packing. I'll call you in a few days about your stuff. It should all be fine. Nora wandered through the house, checking each room. I heard her rummaging in the closet and bathroom, collecting a few things before coming back downstairs with her makeup bag in hand. You didn't miss much, she said with a faint smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Happy to help you move, as long as it's not too close to me, I quipped without hesitation. She suggested going for a walk, but I declined. Wouldn't it be better if you just left? Right, she said, her voice sharpening. How about one last kiss goodbye? I shook my head firmly. I wouldn't kiss someone who's been with someone else. With that, she turned and walked out, and I closed the door behind her, feeling the weight of finality settle in the quiet of the house. 3 months later, my lawyer let me know the divorce papers were finalized. On Monday, I planned to drop by Nora's mother's house to get her signature. Sitting outside in my car, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the moment. When I rang the doorbell, her mother opened it, her face a mix of surprise and curiosity. Well, David, what brings you here? She asked, clearly intrigued. It's been a while. Just here to finish some business, I said. Is Nora around? She's inside. Come on in. She led me into the house, and a few moments later, Nora entered. Her expression was calm, but there was a quiet tension in the air. I just need your signature, I said, holding out the papers. Once you sign, it'll be done. No more loose ends. She looked down at the documents for a long moment before speaking. I guess I was never really enough for you, she murmured, her voice tinged with a mix of regret and bitterness. But do you really think I'm just going to let everything slide? She met my eyes briefly, searching for something unspoken. Then, with a resigned sigh, she left the room, returning moments later with a pen. I watched as she signed each page with swift, deliberate strokes, each movement marking the end of our marriage. When she finished, She slipped the papers into an envelope and handed them back. "You're free now," she said simply. "Thanks for stopping by. Take care of yourself." She turned to her mother, signaling the conversation was over. "Mom, I'm done here. You can come back in." I nodded, acknowledging the closure, and left without another word. As I drove away, I felt a swirl of emotions: relief, sadness, and an unfamiliar sense of uncertainty about what lay ahead. A few weeks later, Nora's father called with news I hadn't expected. After the divorce, Nora had asked Kevin to leave his wife and marry her. But Kevin had admitted he couldn't do it, confessing that his feelings for her had never been more than fleeting. Left reeling, Nora was forced to face the reality of losing both of us in quick succession. Since then, she's been living with her parents, struggling to rebuild her life. Her father mentioned she lost her job under difficult circumstances and has had a hard time finding steady work. Her romantic endeavors haven't fared much better, mostly involving married men or those with dubious intentions. The strain of these choices has taken its toll, and she's now in therapy, working through the fallout of her decisions. Her story is a stark reminder of how the paths we choose can ripple out in ways we never see coming. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel.